Welcome back to another episode of the Sports Playbook. We are your go-to fast sport news. I'm your host, Demos. I'm here to give you a breakdown of what's been happening in the world of sport over the last 7 days, all in time for your commute. So without further ado, let's get right into it. In the AFL, the Brisbane Lions win back-to-back AFL premierships. The Geelong Cats faced off against the Brisbane Lions. Geelong were looking to get their first premiership since 2022, and the Brisbane Lions were looking to go back-to-back. It was a tight contest all the way up until midway through the third quarter. At that point, the Brisbane Lions ran away with it. They ended up winning by 47 points. Will Ashcroft, for a second consecutive year, was voted the Norm Smith medalist. The Norm Smith medalist is the best on ground on AFL Grand Final day. He becomes only the third player in history to win 2 Norm Smith medals. Also for Will Ashcroft, he also won the AFL Player of the Final Series. It was a packed out Melbourne cricket ground. Over 100,000 people in attendance for AFL's final Saturday. Even Snoop Dogg put on one of the greatest grand final pre-game performances in history. In Rugby Union, England win the Rugby Women's World Cup final. England faced off against Canada and came away with the chocolates, defeating Canada 33-13 in front of a sold-out Twickenham crowd. For the host nation, which was England, they raced away to a 21-8 lead at halftime. During the second half, they increased this lead and they never looked in doubt. This World Cup final, it broke a couple of records. From a broadcast point of view, it peaked with over 5.8 million people tuning in to watch the Rugby Women's World Cup final. And in terms of a crowd, 81,885 people turned up at Twickenham. That is the highest crowd ever to attend a women's rugby union match. And in the NRL, the Melbourne Storm and the Brisbane Broncos punched their ticket into the NRL Grand Final. In the first preliminary final, the Cronulla Sharks travelled down to Melbourne to face the Storm. Both teams were right into the fight, especially in the first half, but a late try to Storm fullback Ryan Papenhuyzen gave the Storm a lead, 16-8, going into half-time. Both sides were very evenly matched, especially in the second half. But in the 74th minute, Xavier Coates scored the final try to put the hammer blow into the Sharks through some Harry Grant brilliance coming out of the dummy half position. The final score was the Storm winning 22-14 up against the Sharks. For the Cronulla Sharks, this is another devastating preliminary final loss in back-to-back years. However, they looked really strong throughout this finals campaign, and if you're a Cronulla Sharks fan, personally, I think they can go all the way in season 2026. For the Storm, they punched their ticket into their 11th grand final in an impressive record. In the second preliminary final, the Broncos hosted the Penrith Panthers. Penrith were looking to get into their 6th grand final in a row. For the Panthers, they raced out to a very quick start. Big-time player, Penrith Panthers winger Paul Alamonte scored a double in the first half. The Panthers led 14-0 going into halftime. Into the second half, something very unusual happened. Penrith failed to score again in this match, but the Brisbane Broncos, they started building and they started to attack the Penrith line. In the 75th minute, Brisbane Broncos player Dean Mariner scored the equalising try. 14 all with a kick to come. Reece Walsh was goal kicking during this match. However, only minutes before he missed a conversion. So the conversion went to Adam Reynolds. Adam Reynolds had not kicked in over 7 weeks after he suffered a hamstring injury against the Melbourne Storm. From the sideline, Adam Reynolds kicked an amazing conversion, sending the Broncos crowd into raptures. For Adam Reynolds, this was a slice of redemption. In 2021, when he was playing for the South Sydney Rabbitohs, he missed an all-important conversion and Penrith went on to win their first grand final in this incredible dynasty. But he was the one that made sure Penrith did not get into their 6th grand final in a row. So the Brisbane Broncos punched their ticket into the grand final, and the Brisbane Broncos, they are now into their second grand final in 3 years. And in the NRLW, the Sydney Roosters and the Brisbane Broncos get into the grand final. For the Sydney Roosters, they continue their perfect season. They defeated the Cronulla Sharks 17-16. For the Roosters, they raced out to a 16-6 lead, but with only 15 minutes to go, Bridie Parker, the Roosters fullback, got sin-binned for 10 minutes. Cronulla mounted a comeback, equaling the scores with 5 minutes to go, 16 all until Roosters halfback Jocelyn Kelleher got a field goal to secure the Roosters' victory. And in the other preliminary final, the Brisbane Broncos hosted the Newcastle Knights, but the Brisbane Broncos, they were too strong. They ended up winning 30-6, with Kerry Johnson from the Brisbane Broncos scoring a double in the preliminary final. For the Sydney Roosters, they will aim to win back-to-back premierships and complete a perfect season. For the Brisbane Broncos, they will be looking to ruin the Sydney Roosters party, but also secure their first premiership since 2020. And in golf, Europe defeat USA on home soil in the Ryder Cup. And at Bethpage Black Golf Course, which is in New York, Team USA hosted Team Europe. And Team Europe, they ended up retaining the Ryder Cup. They defeated Team USA 15-13. But this tournament though, it was marred with some unfortunate and unnecessary fan involvement. It involved a lot of vile and unnecessary comments that was directed towards Team Europe player Rory McIlroy and his wife Erica. It even went as far as one of the MCs for the Ryder Cup leading a vile chant that was directed towards Rory McIlroy. For Team Europe though, led by Luke Donald and Rory McIlroy, they were too strong for the Team USA golfers. And in cricket, the Australian team suffered a huge blow just before the T20 series against New Zealand. The T20 sensation Glenn Maxwell has injured himself on the eve of the T20 series. He has been ruled out as he suffered an injury during a net session where unfortunately he was bowling and one of the batters smashed the ball back so quickly it's broken his arm. Josh Philippe will make his return as he's earned a late call-up through the Glenn Maxwell injury. The other person that comes into the team is Marcus Stoinis. Australia will face off against New Zealand in a 3-game T20 series, with the first game starting on October 1st. That is your weekly headlines for the week. And now it's time for the Burning Rubber Breakdown. It's time for the Burning Rubber Breakdown. Let's burn it up. In GT3 racing, Max Verstappen makes his debut in the category, and you guessed it, he won. At the Nürburgring in Germany, Max Verstappen made his debut, swapping his Red Bull F1 car for a Ferrari 296 GT3 car. He qualified in 3rd position, and by the first corner, he was already up into 1st place on his debut. By the time he made his driver change, he had built a 1-minute gap on the rest of the competitors. An average lap at this circuit takes about 8 minutes 45 seconds, as the track is 25 kilometers long. Verstappen handed over to his teammate Chris Lullam that went on to win the race, and Verstappen got his win on debut. I'm sure we are bound to see Max Verstappen enter a lot more endurance races and GT3 races in the future. That is your Burning Rubber Breakdown, and now it's time for our fast fact for a pub chat. It's time to pull up a chair and pour yourself a drink. It's this week's fast fact for a pub chat. This week's fast fact, it's dedicated to the England Women's Rugby Union team. As they have won the 2025 Rugby World Cup as the host nation, they have continued a very impressive record. Over the last 6 years, they have played 63 matches. Do you want to have a guess at how many games they've won? They've won 62 out of 63 games. The only game that they have dropped was the 2022 Rugby Women's World Cup final against New Zealand. Yes, that was a game that does matter a little bit, but an impressive record. That is this week's Fast Fact for a Pub Chat. And now it's time for our Playbook Planner. Here are some sports to look forward to this weekend. In cricket, Australia take on New Zealand in a 3-game T20 series. The games are on the 1st, 3rd and the 4th of October, all starting at the same time, rather convenient, at 4:15 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time. You can catch these matches on Kayo Sports. And in Rugby Union, it's the Bledisloe Cup. It's the Wallabies taking on New Zealand. New Zealand won the first game 33-24 over the weekend. They'll play the second game in Perth on Saturday, the 4th of October, and the match starts at 7:45 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time. You can catch this game on Stan Sport or Channel 9. And now it's time for Sunday. I recommend you sit down for this one because I don't think you're moving from your couch. In the first match, it's the NRLW Grand Final. The Sydney Roosters will take on the Brisbane Broncos. It's starting at 4 p.m. and you can catch this game on Kayo Sports and Channel 9. And then it's the NRL Grand Final. The Melbourne Storm will take on the Brisbane Broncos. This match is on Sunday, the 5th of October, and it starts from 7:30. You can only catch this game on Channel 9. And finally, it's the Formula One. It's the Singapore Grand Prix. It's also on Sunday, the 5th of October, and it starts at 11 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time. You can catch this race on Kayo Sports. And with that, we have come to the end of today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope I've got it in for your commute, and we'll catch you on the next play.